Some moments change us forever, and for Eleanor Cross, it happened the night she found a frightened child hiding under her table. We all have that protective instinct when we see someone hurting, especially a child who has nowhere else to turn. Eleanor lives alone in the Montana mountains, far from the troubles of the world. Her quiet life is all she knows. But when 10-year-old Lucy Price appears in the old saloon, bruised and running from a cruel stepfather, Eleanor cannot look away. She decides to protect the girl. What starts as a simple act of kindness becomes something far more dangerous. Lucy is hiding secrets that powerful people will kill to protect. What could this child possibly know that makes her so dangerous? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The Montana mountains held their secrets close, and Eleanor Cross preferred it that way. Her cabin sat 3 miles off the nearest dirt road, tucked into a fold of pine-covered hills where the wind carried the scent of spruce and old snow even in summer. She had lived there for 15 years, ever since the accident that took her husband and daughter. Some people ran toward noise and crowds when grief came calling. Eleanor had run toward silence. The cabin was simple but well-maintained. One main room served as kitchen, living area, and workspace. A wood stove stood in the corner, its black pipe rising through the roof. 2 smaller rooms branched off, a bedroom and what she called her medical room, stocked with supplies from her years as an army medic. The walls were bare, except for a single shelf holding 3 books she read over and over, their spines cracked from use. Eleanor was 52 years old, though people who saw her rarely guessed it. Her face had the kind of weathering that came from sun and wind rather than age. Her hair, more silver than brown now, she kept tied back in a practical braid. Her hands were strong and scarred from work, splitting wood, tending her small garden, helping the occasional lost hiker who wandered too far from marked trails. She made her living as an unofficial medic for the scattered folks who lived in these mountains. A rancher with a gash from barbed wire, a logger with a dislocated shoulder, a child with a fever that worried her parents. Eleanor treated them all in exchange for supplies, firewood, sometimes just a handshake. She had no license to practice anymore, that had lapsed years ago, but out here, nobody much cared about paperwork. The town of Timber Ridge lay 8 miles down the mountain. Population 800 on a good day. It had one main street with a general store, a post office, a garage, and a saloon that served as the town's unofficial gathering place. Eleanor went to town once a week for supplies, always on Thursday afternoons when she knew the crowds would be thin. The saloon was called the Pine Knot, and it was run by Pauline Hart, a woman in her 60s with a quick laugh and a generous heart. Pauline was the closest thing Eleanor had to a friend, though even that friendship came with boundaries. They spoke about weather and supplies, sometimes about the news from the valley below. They did not speak about the past. On this particular Thursday in late September, Eleanor sat at her usual table in the corner of the Pine Knot. The afternoon light slanted through the dusty windows, illuminating particles of dust that drifted in the still air. She had finished her meal, venison stew and bread, and was reviewing her supply list when she heard the door open. Sheriff Roy Brennan walked in, his boots heavy on the wooden floor. He was a decent man, Eleanor thought, but worn down by a job that asked more than he could give. He nodded to her and took a seat at the bar, ordering coffee from Pauline. "Quiet today," Pauline said, setting the cup in front of him. "Too quiet," Brennan replied. "Got a call this morning. Missing girl. 10 years old." Eleanor's hand paused over her list. "Name's Lucy Price," Brennan continued. "Stepdaughter of Harlan Price, one of my deputies. Girl ran off last night. Harlan's worried sick." Pauline made a sympathetic sound. Eleanor said nothing, but something in the way Brennan spoke made her uneasy. There was a flatness to his voice, as if he were reciting lines he did not quite believe. "He's a good man, Harlan," Brennan went on. "Takes care of that girl after her mama passed. Some kids just don't appreciate what they have." Eleanor folded her supply list and stood. She left money on the table and headed for the door without speaking to either of them. Outside, the air felt cleaner. She loaded her supplies into the bed of her old pickup truck, taking her time with each bag and box. The drive back to the cabin took 40 minutes on the winding mountain road. Eleanor's mind kept returning to the sheriff's words. A 10-year-old girl running away. A stepfather worried sick. Something about it did not sit right, though she could not say exactly what. The sun was setting when she arrived home, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. She unloaded her supplies and started a fire in the stove. The cabin grew warm as darkness fell. She made tea and sat in her chair by the window, watching the stars emerge one by one. She thought, as she often did, about Emma. Her daughter would have been 25 now. She tried to imagine what Emma would look like as a grown woman, but the image never came clear. All she had were memories of a 10-year-old girl with bright eyes and a laugh that could light up a room. The accident had happened overseas. Eleanor had been deployed, working at a field hospital in Afghanistan. Her husband David had been driving Emma to her piano lesson. A drunk driver ran a red light, both dead before the ambulance arrived. Eleanor got the news from a chaplain who looked too young to understand what he was telling her. She had come home for the funeral, then returned to finish her deployment because she did not know what else to do. When she finally came back to the States for good, she could not bear to stay in their house. She sold everything, packed what little she wanted to keep, and drove until she found a place where the silence was loud enough to drown out her thoughts. That was 15 years ago. The grief had dulled but never disappeared. It lived in her chest like a stone, smooth and heavy. Eleanor finished her tea and was about to head to bed when she heard something. A small sound, barely audible. A scraping, like wood against wood. She set down her cup and listened. There it was again. Coming from underneath the table, Eleanor moved slowly, her instincts from her military training taking over. She knelt down and looked under the table. In the shadows, she saw a small figure pressed against the wall. Two eyes stared back at her, wide with terror. "It's all right," Eleanor said softly. "I'm not going to hurt you." The figure did not move. Eleanor sat back on her heels. "Are you hungry?" "I have food." A long moment passed. Then slowly, the figure crawled forward into the light. It was a girl, small and thin, with tangled dark hair and a face marked by bruises. Her clothes were torn and dirty. She could not have been more than 10 years old. Eleanor recognized her from the description. "Lucy Price." The girl stared at her, trembling. Eleanor did not reach for her. She simply stayed where she was, keeping her voice calm and steady. "My name is Eleanor," she said. "This is my home. You're safe here." The girl's lips moved, but no sound came out. "Are you hurt?" Eleanor asked. A small nod. Eleanor stood slowly and moved to her medical room. She gathered supplies, bandages, antiseptic, clean cloths, and returned to find the girl still crouched by the table. Eleanor set the supplies down and knelt again, not too close. "I used to be a medic in the army," she said. "I can help you if you'll let me." The girl looked at the supplies, then back at Eleanor. Something in Eleanor's face must have reassured her, because she moved forward slightly, just enough. Eleanor worked carefully, cleaning the cuts and bruises on the girl's arms and face. Some were fresh. Others were older, fading to yellow and green. The pattern told a story Eleanor had seen before, in other places, other times. This was not the result of a fall or an accident. This was deliberate. "What's your name?" Eleanor asked as she worked. "Lucy," the girl whispered. "Lucy, that's a good name." Eleanor finished treating the visible wounds. She suspected there were others hidden by clothing, but those could wait. The girl needed food and rest more than anything. She helped Lucy to her feet and guided her to the table. She heated up the leftover stew and set it in front of her with bread and water. Lucy ate like someone who had not seen food in days, barely pausing between bites. Eleanor watched her and felt something shift inside her chest. That stone of grief seemed to crack just slightly, letting in a sliver of light. She recognized this feeling. It was the same instinct that had made her become a medic in the first place. The need to help, to protect, to make things right. When Lucy finished eating, Eleanor made up the couch with blankets and a pillow. Lucy lay down without protest, her eyes already closing. Within minutes, she was asleep. Eleanor sat in her chair and watched the girl breathe. She knew this was trouble. She knew that keeping Lucy here, even for one night, meant stepping into something she might not be able to step out of. The girl had a stepfather, a deputy sheriff. The law was on his side, whatever Eleanor might suspect about those bruises. But when she looked at Lucy's face, relaxed in sleep for the first time in who knew how long, Eleanor knew she could not turn her away. Not yet. Not until she understood what the girl was running from. The fire in the stove burned low. Eleanor added another log and settled into her chair. She would not sleep tonight. She would keep watch, the way she had kept watch over wounded soldiers in field hospitals, the way she wished she could have kept watch over her own daughter. Outside, the Montana night was cold and clear. Inside, for the first time in 15 years, Eleanor's cabin held more than just her memories. It held a life that needed protecting, a child who had nowhere else to go. She did not know it yet, but that night marked the end of her isolation and the beginning of something that would test every skill she had learned in war and every lesson she had learned from loss. The quiet life she had built was about to come apart, and there would be no going back to the way things were. Lucy stirred in her sleep, murmuring something Eleanor could not make out. Eleanor leaned forward and adjusted the blanket, tucking it around the girl's thin shoulders. In that moment, she made a decision that would change both their lives forever. Whatever came next, she would face it. For Lucy, for the memory of Emma, for every child who deserved better than what they had been given. The night deepened. Eleanor kept her vigil, and in the silence of the mountains, something shifted. Something that had been frozen for 15 years began, finally, to thaw. Morning came with the sound of an engine on the mountain road. Eleanor was awake instantly, her body remembering the alert state from her military years. She moved to the window and saw a sheriff's vehicle making its way up the dirt track toward her cabin. Lucy was still asleep on the couch. Eleanor went to her and placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. The girl woke with a start, her eyes wild with fear. "It's all right," Eleanor said quietly. "But someone's coming. Do you trust me?" Lucy nodded, though her whole body had gone rigid. "Go to the back room. The one with the medical supplies. There's a closet in there. Get inside and stay quiet no matter what you hear." "Can you do that?" Lucy scrambled off the couch and ran to the back room. Eleanor heard the closet door close, just as the vehicle pulled up outside. She took a breath, steadied herself, and went to the door. Sheriff Brennan stood on her porch, and beside him was a man Eleanor had seen around town but never spoken to. He was tall and broad-shouldered, with a clean-cut appearance, and a smile that did not reach his eyes. His uniform was crisp, his badge polished. This had to be Harlan Price. "Morning, Eleanor," Brennan said, sounding apologetic. "Sorry to bother you this early. What can I do for you, Sheriff?" "This is Deputy Harlan Price. We're looking for his stepdaughter. Girl named Lucy, 10 years old. You hear anything about that in town yesterday?" "I heard you mention it at the saloon," Eleanor said. "I'm sorry for your trouble, Deputy." Harlan stepped forward, his smile widening. "We're just checking with folks who live up in these hills. Lucy gets confused sometimes. She has some problems. Mental problems, you understand. She needs her medication." Eleanor kept her face neutral. "I haven't seen any children up here. Mind if we take a look around?" Harlan's voice remained pleasant, but there was steel underneath. "Just to be sure. Girl could have wandered into your property without you knowing. I think I'd notice a child on my property, Deputy." Brennan shifted uncomfortably. "Eleanor, we just need to make sure." "It won't take long." Eleanor considered refusing, but that would only make them suspicious. She stepped aside. "Go ahead." They came in and looked around the main room. Eleanor watched Harlan's eyes take in every detail. The single plate and cup in the sink, the blankets on the couch, the medical supplies on the counter. His jaw tightened slightly when he saw the bandages and antiseptic, but he said nothing. Brennan checked the bedroom while Harlan moved toward the back room. Eleanor's heart beat faster, but she kept her breathing steady. The closet was small and packed with supplies. If Lucy stayed absolutely still, they might miss her. Harlan opened the door to the medical room and looked inside. Eleanor watched from the doorway as his eyes scanned the shelves, the examination table, the closet door. He walked to the closet and put his hand on the handle. "Deputy," Eleanor said sharply, "that closet contains medical supplies. Some of them are medications I keep for emergencies. I'd appreciate it if you didn't disturb them." Harlan turned to look at her. For a moment, his mask slipped, and she saw something cold and calculating in his expression. Then the smile returned. "Of course. Just being thorough." He released the handle and walked back to the main room. Brennan emerged from the bedroom, shaking his head. "Nothing, Harlan." "Well, thank you for your cooperation, Mom," Harlan said. "If you do see Lucy, it's important you let us know right away. Like I said, she needs her medication. Without it, she could hurt herself. Or others." The implied threat was clear. Eleanor met his eyes and nodded. "I'll keep that in mind." After they left, Eleanor waited until she heard the vehicle drive away before going to the back room. She opened the closet door and found Lucy pressed into the corner behind a stack of supply boxes, her hands clamped over her mouth to keep from making any sound. "They're gone," Eleanor said gently. "You did well," Lucy crawled out, shaking. Tears streamed down her face. "He found me. He always finds me." Eleanor helped her to her feet and guided her back to the main room. She poured water and made Lucy drink it slowly. When the girl's breathing steadied, Eleanor sat down across from her. "Lucy, I need you to tell me the truth. All of it. Why are you running from him?" Lucy's voice was barely a whisper. "He killed my mama." Eleanor felt the words like a physical blow. "Tell me what happened." The story came out in fragments. Lucy's mother had died 2 years ago. The official report said she fell down the stairs, but Lucy had been there. She had heard them arguing. She had heard her mother scream. She had seen Harlan standing at the top of the stairs, his face twisted with rage, as her mother lay broken at the bottom. "I told people," Lucy said, fresh tears falling. "I told the sheriff. I told my teacher. Nobody believed me. They said I was confused. They said I was upset about Mama dying and making up stories. Harlan said I needed help. He said I was," she struggled with the word, "delusional. And the bruises." Eleanor asked, though she already knew the answer. "He hits me when I try to tell people the truth. He says if I don't stop lying, I'll end up like Mama." Eleanor's hands clenched into fists under the table. She took a moment to control her anger before speaking. "Lucy, do you have any proof? Anything that could show what really happened?" Lucy reached into her pocket and pulled out a small, worn notebook. "Mama kept a journal. She wrote down things Harlan did, things he said. I took it after she died. I hid it so he wouldn't find it." She handed the notebook to Eleanor. The pages were filled with neat handwriting, entries dated over the course of a year before the mother's death. Eleanor read quickly, her medical training helping her pass the details. The entries described meetings between Harlan and a man named Thornton Wade. They mentioned shipments and routes through mountain passes. They talked about money, large amounts of it. Lucy's mother had been suspicious. She had started following Harlan, watching him. She had written down license plate numbers, dates, times, and in the final entry, dated 3 days before her death, she had written, "I confronted H about what I saw. He threatened me. I need to take Lucy and leave tomorrow." She never got the chance. Eleanor closed the notebook and looked at Lucy. "This is evidence of something illegal. Your stepfather was involved in something criminal, and your mother found out. What do we do?" Lucy asked. Eleanor's mind raced through the options. Going to Sheriff Brennan was useless. He clearly either did not believe Lucy or did not want to. Going to anyone in town was risky if Harlan had connections. The notebook mentioned Thornton Wade, and Eleanor knew that name. Wade owned half the county, controlled businesses and politicians alike. If Harlan was working for Wade, they were dealing with more than just one corrupt deputy. "We can't stay here," Eleanor said. "Harlan knows where I live now. He'll be watching. If he has any suspicion that you're here, he'll come back with a warrant or just with force. Where do we go?" Eleanor thought of Marcus Webb, her old army contact, who lived in the abandoned mining town of Silver Creek. Marcus was off the grid, someone who could be trusted. If anyone could help them figure out their next move, it was him. "I know someone," Eleanor said. "Someone who might be able to help. But we have to leave now, before Harlan comes back." She moved quickly, gathering supplies, food, water, medical kit. Warm clothes for Lucy. She pulled an old backpack from the closet and filled it with essentials. From a locked box under her bed, she retrieved something she had not touched in years, her service pistol. Cleaned and maintained, but never fired since she left the army. Lucy watched with wide eyes as Eleanor checked the weapon and loaded it. "Are we going to be okay?" Eleanor looked at the girl, this small, brave child who had survived so much already, and made a choice. The law might be on Harlan's side, but justice was not. And Eleanor had spent 15 years running from life. It was time to run towards something instead. "Yes," she said. "We're going to be okay. I promise you that." She did not know if it was a promise she could keep, but she would die trying. They left the cabin as the sun climbed over the mountains. Eleanor took one last look at the place that had been her refuge for so long, knowing she might never see it again. Then she turned away and led Lucy into the wilderness, starting a journey that would take them far from safety and deep into a darkness neither of them fully understood yet. Behind them, hidden in the trees near the cabin, a small electronic device blinked silently. Harlan had not left empty-handed. He had planted a tracker while Brennan distracted Eleanor with questions. And now, as Eleanor and Lucy disappeared into the forest, Harlan sat in his vehicle down the mountain, watching a screen that showed their exact location. He smiled and made a phone call. "Mr. Wade, I found her, and she's got company, that Cross woman. The one who used to be Army." On the other end, Thornton Wade's voice was cold and businesslike. "Deal with both of them. No witnesses, no evidence. Make it clean." "Yes, sir," Harlan said. He started his vehicle and began to follow at a distance, a hunter with his prey in sight. The mountain wilderness stretched out before them, vast and indifferent to human troubles. Eleanor led Lucy along paths she knew from years of solitary hiking, avoiding the main trails where they might encounter other people. They moved steadily upward, into the higher elevations where the air grew thin and cold. Lucy struggled to keep pace, but she never complained. Eleanor adjusted her speed, taking breaks when she saw the girl faltering. During one such rest, sitting on a fallen log beside a clear stream, Lucy pulled out her mother's journal and held it against her chest. "Can I ask you something?" Lucy said, "Of course. Why are you helping me?" "You don't know me." Eleanor considered the question. The honest answer was complicated, tied up with grief and guilt and the ghost of a daughter who would never grow older. But she tried to simplify it. "Because you need help," she said. "And because nobody else seems willing to give it to you. Harlan says I'm a liar, that I make things up for attention. Do you?" Lucy shook her head fiercely. "I saw what I saw. I know what happened to my mama." "Then that's what matters," Eleanor said. "May I look at that journal again?" Lucy handed it over. Eleanor opened it to a random page and began reading more carefully than she had before. Lucy's mother, her name had been Sarah, wrote with precision and detail. She had documented 17 separate meetings between Harlan and Thornton Wade over the course of 8 months. She had noted the dates, locations, and times. More than that, she had recorded observations about their conversations. Words overheard through windows or doors. Shipment, route, payment, clean run. Sarah had been smart enough to know these words meant something illegal, even if she did not know exactly what. But one entry caught Eleanor's attention. It was dated 6 months before Sarah's death. H came home late with dirt on his boots and blood on his shirt. Said he'd been hunting, but it was the wrong season, and he had no game. When I asked about it, he got angry. Told me to mind my business. I've never seen him like that before. I'm scared. Eleanor's military training kicked in. She recognized the language of logistics and operations. The patterns Sarah had documented, regular meetings at specific intervals, references to routes and shipments, matched what Eleanor had seen in intelligence briefings about trafficking operations. "Lucy," Eleanor said carefully, "did your mother ever talk to you about what she suspected?" "She said Harlan was doing bad things. She said we needed to leave. She was saving money to run away with me." Lucy's voice cracked. She almost had enough. Just a few more weeks and we were going to go. Eleanor closed the journal and looked at the girl. "There's something else in here. An entry from 3 days before your mother died. She wrote that she confronted Harlan about what she saw. I remember that night, Lucy whispered. They fought. Mama was crying. Harlan was yelling. I hid in my room. Did you hear what they said? Lucy closed her eyes, remembering. Harlan said she was going to ruin everything. Mama said she couldn't stay quiet anymore. She said people were getting hurt because of what he was doing. Then Harlan said, Lucy's breath hitched. He said that if she told anyone, she'd regret it. And 3 days later, she was dead. Eleanor felt a familiar rage building in her chest. She had seen corruption before, in war zones, where the lines between right and wrong became blurred. But this was different. This was not a foreign battlefield. This was home, and a man who wore a badge was using it to protect his crimes and terrorize a child. They continued hiking as the afternoon wore on. Eleanor's mind worked through the problem like a tactical exercise. They needed to get to Marcus in Silver Creek. They needed to verify what was in the journal and gather more evidence. And they needed to find someone in authority who would actually listen, someone beyond Wade's influence. As the sun began to set, Eleanor found a sheltered spot beneath an overhang of rock. She made camp quickly and efficiently, gathering wood for a small fire. Lucy watched her with fascination as she worked. How do you know how to do all this? Lucy asked. Army taught me. I was a medic, but we all learned survival skills. Were you in a war? Yes, Afghanistan. I was there for 2 tours. Did you? Lucy hesitated. Did you ever have to hurt people? Eleanor paused in her work. I saved people. That was my job. But sometimes, to save some people, you have to stop others. Do you understand? Lucy nodded slowly. Like now. You're saving me from Harlan. Yes, like now. They ate a simple meal of dried meat and crackers. Eleanor rationed their supplies carefully, knowing they had at least 2 more days of hiking before reaching Silver Creek. As darkness fell, she built up the fire and wrapped Lucy in a blanket. Try to sleep, Eleanor said. I'll keep watch. But Lucy stayed awake, staring into the flames. Eleanor, can I tell you something? Of course. The night Mama died, I saw something else. Something I didn't tell anyone because I knew they wouldn't believe me. Eleanor waited, letting the girl gather her courage. 3 days before she fell, I saw Harlan meeting with Mr. Wade. I wasn't supposed to be there. I was supposed to be at a friend's house, but the friend got sick, so I came home early. I heard voices in the barn, so I looked through a crack in the wood. Lucy's hands twisted in the blanket. There were men unloading boxes from trucks, big wooden boxes. Harlan and Mr. Wade were watching them. And then one of the men, a man with a red jacket, he started arguing with Mr. Wade. He was saying something about money, about not getting paid enough. Eleanor's attention sharpened. What happened then? Mr. Wade pulled out a gun and shot him. Just shot him. Right there. The man fell down and didn't move. Then Mr. Wade told the other men to clean it up and get back to work. And Harlan just stood there. He didn't do anything. He didn't arrest Mr. Wade or call for help. He just stood there. Eleanor felt ice in her veins. Lucy, this is important. When was this? 3 days before Mama died. The same day she confronted Harlan. The pieces fell into place. Sarah had not just discovered evidence of trafficking. She had learned that her husband had witnessed and become complicit in a murder. And when she confronted him, she signed her own death warrant. Did anyone see you? At the barn? I don't think so. I ran home and hid in my room. I didn't tell Mama what I saw until the next day. And then she confronted him. And then she died. Lucy started crying silently, tears reflecting the firelight. Eleanor moved closer and put an arm around the girl's thin shoulders. She did not offer empty comfort or tell Lucy everything would be fine. Instead, she held her and let her cry, understanding that sometimes grief needed to flow like water before it could settle. When Lucy finally quieted, Eleanor spoke. You're very brave. Braver than most adults I've known. And I want you to know something. What happened to your mother was not your fault. Do you hear me? Not your fault. But I told her what I saw, and she made a choice to confront him. That was her choice, made out of love for you and a desire to do what was right. You carry her courage now. You honor her by telling the truth. Lucy wiped her eyes and looked up at Eleanor. Do you really think we can stop him? Stop both of them? Eleanor thought about the journal, about Lucy's testimony, about the murder the girl had witnessed. She thought about Thornton Wade's power and Harlan's badge and the way corruption could rot a system from the inside. It would be easy to lie, to offer false hope, but Lucy deserved the truth. I don't know, Eleanor said, but I know we have to try. And I know I won't let them hurt you. That's a promise I can keep. Lucy leaned against her, exhausted. Within minutes, the girl was asleep. Eleanor kept watch through the night, feeding the fire and listening to the sounds of the wilderness. Somewhere behind them, she knew, Harlan was following. Somewhere ahead lay uncertainty and danger, but for now, in this moment, Lucy was safe. And that was enough. On the second day of their journey, they heard the search party. Voices carried through the mountain air, calling Lucy's name with false concern. Harlan's voice was among them, shouting about medication and illness, painting himself as a worried parent. Eleanor pulled Lucy into a cave system she knew from her years exploring these mountains. The caves were narrow and dark, carved by ancient water through limestone. She led Lucy deep inside, past the entrance chamber into a passage that twisted downward. I can't see, Lucy whispered, her voice tight with fear. Hold my hand. I know the way. They moved slowly, Eleanor counting steps and using her free hand to feel along the damp stone walls. Behind them, the voices grew louder. The search party had found their trail. In the darkness, Lucy's breathing became rapid and shallow. Eleanor recognized the signs of panic. She stopped and knelt down, still holding Lucy's hand. Listen to me, she said quietly. You're safe. I've been in darker places than this. In Afghanistan, we had to hide in spaces so small you couldn't move. I learned that darkness is just the absence of light. It can't hurt you. Can you breathe with me? She took exaggerated breaths, slow and steady. After a moment, Lucy matched her rhythm. They stood there in the complete blackness, breathing together until Lucy's hand stopped shaking. Better? Eleanor asked. Better. They continued deeper until they reached a small chamber Eleanor had discovered years ago. Water trickled somewhere in the darkness, and the air smelled of minerals and earth. They sat down with their backs against the stone wall and waited. Above them, they heard boots on rock. Flashlight beams probed the cave entrance. Harlan's voice echoed, "Search it! They could be hiding in there!" Eleanor held Lucy close, her hand ready on the pistol at her belt. But the searchers only went as far as the first chamber before retreating. The passages beyond were too narrow and twisted for men Harlan's size to navigate easily. After the voices faded, Eleanor and Lucy waited another hour in the darkness before making their way back out. They emerged into late afternoon light that seemed almost painfully bright after the cave's blackness. They traveled through the night, Eleanor using the stars for navigation. Lucy stumbled with exhaustion, but pushed on without complaint. Just before dawn, they crested a ridge and looked down into a valley where the remains of Silver Creek sat scattered like old bones. The town had been abandoned for 30 years, left to rot after the mines played out. Most of the buildings had collapsed into themselves. But Eleanor knew that Marcus Webb maintained a workshop in one of the old storefronts, living alone and working as a gunsmith for select clients. They made their way down into the valley as the sun rose. Eleanor approached Marcus's workshop cautiously, watching for signs of life. She saw smoke rising from a chimney, a good sign. She told Lucy to wait behind a ruined wall while she approached the door. She knocked 3 times, paused, then knocked twice more, an old signal from their army days. The door opened a crack. A weathered face peered out, eyes sharp despite the grey hair and lined features. Recognition dawned, followed by surprise. "Eleanor Cross, didn't think I'd ever see you again." "Hello, Marcus." He opened the door wider, revealing a tall man in his late 50s with a pronounced limp, the result of an IED in Iraq that had ended his military career, but not his life. His workshop was cluttered but organized, tools hanging on walls, workbenches covered with partially assembled firearms. "You're in trouble," Marcus said. "It was not a question. I need help. When don't you?" But his eyes were kind. "Come in." Eleanor signaled to Lucy, who emerged from hiding and hurried to the door. Marcus looked at the girl with surprise, then at Eleanor with understanding. "Should I ask?" "Probably better if I just tell you." Marcus made coffee, while Eleanor explained the situation. He listened without interrupting, his face growing darker as the story unfolded. When Eleanor finished, he set down his cup and looked at Lucy. "You've been through something no child should have to face." "I'm sorry for that." Lucy nodded, not quite meeting his eyes. Marcus turned to Eleanor. "You're right about Wade. He's been running operations through these mountains for years. Drugs, mostly. Maybe weapons, too. Nobody's been able to touch him because he owns half the law enforcement in 3 counties. How do you know this?" "I hear things. People talk when they come to buy guns. And I've got contacts from the old days." He paused. "There's a DEA agent I know. Teresa Hammond. Good person, clean record. If anyone can help, it's her. Can you reach her?" "I can try." "But Eleanor..." Marcus's expression grew serious. "If Wade's involved, this isn't going to be simple. He has resources, people on his payroll at every level. You're not just fighting one corrupt deputy. You're fighting a whole network." "I understand." Marcus looked at Lucy again, then back at Eleanor. "You sure you want to take this on? You could leave the girl with authorities in another county. Wash your hands of it." Eleanor's answer was immediate. "No." Marcus nodded slowly, as if he had expected that response. "You always did have a problem with walking away from a fight. Even when you should." He stood and moved to a locked cabinet, from which he retrieved a clean pistol and 2 boxes of ammunition. He set them on the table in front of Eleanor. "If you're doing this, you're going to do it properly armed. This is untraceable. Use it if you need to." Eleanor picked up the weapon, checked it professionally, and nodded her thanks. Marcus made contact with his DEA source that afternoon, using an encrypted phone and speaking in careful terms. He arranged a meeting for 3 days out in a location halfway between Silver Creek and the larger town of Bitterroot, where Hammond was based. While they waited, Lucy explored the workshop under Marcus's patient guidance. He showed her how various mechanisms worked, let her help with simple repairs. Eleanor watched the way he spoke to Lucy, with respect and gentleness, treating her as capable rather than fragile. On their second night in Silver Creek, Eleanor found Lucy standing at the workshop window, staring out at the darkened ruins of the town. "What are you thinking about?" Eleanor asked. "My mama. I wonder if she'd be proud of me. For running away. For telling people the truth." Eleanor stood beside her. "I think she'd be very proud. I think she's watching over you, making sure you're safe." "Do you believe that?" "About people watching over us after they die." Eleanor thought of Emma, of David. She thought of all the soldiers she had treated who died in her care and the ones she had saved. She thought about faith and loss and the stories people told themselves to make sense of the darkness. "I believe that the people we love never truly leave us," she said finally. "They live on in our choices, in our courage. Your mother's bravery lives on in you." Lucy was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "What about your family? Do they live on in you?" Eleanor felt the question like a hand squeezing her heart, but she did not turn away from it. "Yes, every time I help someone, every time I choose to do what's right instead of what's easy, that's them. That's Emma and David still here with me." "I'm glad you found me," Lucy said softly. "I think maybe we needed each other." Eleanor put her arm around the girl's shoulders. "I think maybe we did." Outside, the Montana night was cold and clear. Inside the workshop, warmed by the wood stove, 2 survivors stood together in the darkness, drawing strength from shared loss and shared purpose. Neither of them knew that their meeting with the DEA agent would end in violence, or that the conspiracy they were unraveling went even deeper than they suspected. For now, they had this moment of peace, and in the calculus of difficult lives, that was worth more than they could measure. The day of the meeting with DEA agent Hammond arrived with a crisp autumn morning. Eleanor and Lucy left Silver Creek before dawn, Marcus's directions clear in Eleanor's mind. The meeting point was 2 hours away by vehicle, in a clearing off a forestry road where they would have good sight lines and multiple escape routes. Eleanor drove Marcus's truck. He had insisted, saying her own vehicle might be compromised. Lucy sat in the passenger seat with her backpack on her lap, quiet and tense. They had reviewed their story multiple times. Lucy knew what she would need to tell the agent. An hour into the drive, Eleanor noticed a vehicle maintaining consistent distance behind them. Not following closely, but there. Her instincts prickled with warning. She took a turn onto a side road, watching her mirror. The vehicle followed. "Lucy," she said calmly, "we might have a problem." Lucy turned to look back. "Is someone following us?" "I think so." Eleanor's mind raced through possibilities. She had been careful. They had stayed hidden in Silver Creek. Marcus's workshop was known to very few people. How could Harlan have found them? Then it hit her. The backpack. Lucy had been carrying it since the first night at Eleanor's cabin, the night Harlan came to search. "Lucy, give me your backpack." The girl handed it over. Eleanor pulled to the side of the road at an abandoned rest stop and began systematically searching the bag. She found it sewn into the lining, a small electronic tracking device, no bigger than a coin. "He planted this when he came to my cabin," Eleanor said, feeling anger and disgust. "He's been tracking us the whole time." Lucy's face went white. "He knows where we're going." Eleanor made a decision. She removed the device and placed it in the wheel well of an old abandoned truck at the rest stop. Let Harlan waste time following a dead trail, but damage was done. If Harlan had been tracking them, he knew about their meeting with Hammond. And if Wade had been alerted, they might be walking into a trap. "We continue on foot from here," Eleanor said. "It's only a few miles through the woods." They left Marcus's truck hidden in the trees and began hiking. The terrain was rough, slowing them down. By the time they reached the clearing where they were supposed to meet Hammond, they were 30 minutes late. Agent Hammond was already there, standing beside an unmarked sedan. She was a woman in her early 40s with short-cropped hair and alert eyes that had seen too much. When Eleanor and Lucy emerged from the tree line, Hammond's hand went reflexively to her weapon before she recognized them as civilians. "You're late," Hammond said. "Marcus said you'd be here by 10. "We had complications," Eleanor replied. She quickly explained about the tracking device. Hammond's expression darkened. "If they know about this meeting," she did not finish the sentence. Gunshots rang out from the tree line. Hammond went down with a cry, hit in the shoulder. Eleanor grabbed Lucy and dove behind the sedan as more shots tore through the air. She drew the pistol Marcus had given her and returned fire toward the source, forcing the shooter to take cover. "Stay down," Eleanor ordered Lucy. She crawled to where Hammond lay, her training taking over. The agent was conscious, her hand pressed against the wound. "How bad?" Eleanor asked. "I'll live." "Get the girl out of here, not without you." More gunshots. Eleanor saw movement in the trees, at least 2 shooters, maybe 3. They were using professional tactics, flanking and covering each other. This was not Harlan acting alone. These were Wade's people. Eleanor helped Hammond behind better cover, leaving a trail of blood on the ground. She tore fabric from her shirt and pressed it against the wound, making Hammond hold it in place. "Can you shoot?" Eleanor asked. "Yes," Hammond gasped. Eleanor positioned herself to cover Lucy and Hammond while returning fire. Her military training came flooding back. Target acquisition, controlled breathing, economy of ammunition. She did not shoot to kill, but to suppress, keeping the attackers pinned down. One of the shooters broke cover, trying to circle around. Eleanor tracked him and fired twice. He went down, wounded. The other shooters retreated slightly, reassessing. "My backup is coming," Hammond said through gritted teeth. "Called them when I heard the first shot. 10 minutes out." 10 minutes might as well be an hour. Eleanor checked her ammunition. "Running low." She looked at Lucy, who was pressed against the car, her eyes wide with terror, but her body still. "Lucy, listen to me. When I say run, you run toward those rocks." Eleanor pointed to an outcropping 30 yards away. "Don't stop, don't look back. Understand?" "What about you?" "I'll cover you." "Go on my mark." Eleanor waited for a lull in the shooting, then stood and fired rapidly toward the tree line, emptying her magazine. "Run!" Lucy sprinted toward the rocks. The shooters fired at her, but Eleanor's suppressing fire threw off their aim. Lucy made it to cover unharmed. Eleanor dropped back behind the sedan and reloaded her last magazine. Hammond handed Eleanor her service weapon. "Take this. More ammunition than yours." Eleanor accepted it gratefully. The shooters were being more cautious now, having lost one of their people. They were waiting, probably trying to decide if they should retreat or press the attack. Then Eleanor heard it. Sirens in the distance. Hammond's backup was coming. The decision was made for the shooters. They melted back into the forest, unwilling to be caught at the scene. Eleanor waited, weapon ready, until the first police vehicles arrived with lights flashing. Federal agents poured out, securing the scene. One of them went to Hammond while others searched the tree line. Eleanor called out to Lucy, who emerged from behind the rocks, shaking but unhurt. The agent tending to Hammond looked up at Eleanor. "You, Cross?" "Yes. Agent Hammond told us about you." "About the girl. We need statements from both of you." Eleanor watched as Hammond was loaded into an ambulance. The agent met her eyes and nodded once, a signal of respect and understanding. When the initial chaos settled, Eleanor and Lucy sat in the back of an agency vehicle while agents processed the scene. One of the wounded shooters had been captured. He was not talking, but his presence meant evidence, meant leverage. An agent approached, male, mid-30s, with the bearing of someone used to authority. "I'm Agent Ross. Hammond briefed me on your situation before the meeting. She suspected there might be a leak in the agency." "She was right," Eleanor said. Ross nodded grimly. "We're treating this as a compromised operation. I can't guarantee your safety through normal channels. Wade has people everywhere. What do you suggest?" "There's a safe house off the books. Only 3 people know about it. You and the girl can stay there while we build a case. With what you've told Hammond, plus the girl's testimony, plus the evidence from today, we can bring Wade down. But it's going to take time." Eleanor looked at Lucy, who looked back at her with trust that felt like a physical weight. "How much time?" 72 hours. Maybe less if we move fast." Ross handed Eleanor a phone. "This is a burner. Only I have the number. You need anything, you call me directly." They were driven to the safe house, a cabin even more isolated than Eleanor's, stocked with supplies and defended by geography. Ross left them with weapons, food, and instructions to stay invisible. After he left, Eleanor secured the cabin while Lucy sat at the table, still processing what had happened. "They really tried to kill us," Lucy said quietly. "Yes, because of what I know. Because of what you represent, the truth. And powerful people hate the truth when it threatens them." Lucy was silent for a moment. "Are you scared?" Eleanor sat down across from her. "Yes, but being scared doesn't mean giving up. It means being smart about what comes next." "What does come next?" Eleanor looked out the window at the Montana wilderness, vast and unforgiving. "We wait, we survive, and then we make sure your mother didn't die for nothing." 3 days passed in the safe house, each one stretching longer than the last. Eleanor and Lucy fell into a routine born of necessity, checking perimeters, rationing supplies, maintaining weapons. But in the quiet moments, something deeper developed between them. On the second evening, as they sat by the wood stove, Lucy noticed the silver chain around Eleanor's neck. "What's that?" Eleanor's hand went reflexively to the locket she always wore. She had not opened it in months, maybe longer. For a moment, she considered deflecting the question, but Lucy had been honest with her about everything. She deserved the same in return. "It's a locket. It has a picture inside. Can I see?" Eleanor unclasped the chain and opened the locket with careful fingers. Inside was a photograph of a girl with bright eyes and a gap-toothed smile. She was 10 years old, wearing a soccer uniform, holding a trophy. Lucy studied the photo. "She looks like she was happy." She was. Most of the time. Eleanor's voice was soft. "Her name was Emma. She was my daughter. Was. She died 15 years ago. Car accident. She was with my husband. They both—" Eleanor stopped, the words catching in her throat even after all these years. "They both died instantly. I was overseas when it happened." Lucy looked up at Eleanor with understanding beyond her years. "Is that why you live alone? In the mountains?" "Yes. After they died, I couldn't stay in the places we had been together. Everything reminded me of them. So I ran away to somewhere that had no memories." "Did it help?" Eleanor considered the question honestly. No, grief doesn't stay behind when you leave. It comes with you. I spent 15 years hiding from it instead of living with it. Lucy handed the locket back carefully. She looks like she was 10. Like me, yes. She was 10 when she died. Understanding passed between them, the unspoken recognition of why Eleanor had been so quick to protect Lucy, why she had risked everything for a stranger's child. Eleanor was not just saving Lucy. In some way, she was trying to save the daughter she had lost. I'm not Emma, Lucy said quietly. I know that, but you're trying to protect me the way you couldn't protect her. Eleanor felt tears sting her eyes. Yes, I suppose I am. Lucy moved closer and hugged Eleanor suddenly, fiercely. Eleanor held her, surprised by the strength of her own emotions. She had spent so long keeping people at a distance, afraid that caring would lead to more loss. But here was this brave, damaged child offering comfort, even though she was the one who needed it most. When they separated, Lucy wiped her own eyes. My mama used to say that we can't change the past, but we can honor it by how we live. I think you're honoring Emma by helping me. Eleanor pulled the chain over her head and placed the locket in Lucy's hands. I want you to have this. I can't. Yes, you can. Emma would have liked you. You're brave like she was, strong like she was. Carrying her picture means you're carrying something important to me. And if anything happens, Eleanor swallowed hard. If anything happens to me, you'll have something to remember that people cared about you, that you mattered. Lucy clutched the locket to her chest. Nothing's going to happen to you. Probably not. But in case it does, I need you to promise me something. If we get separated, you run. You run to Agent Ross, and you tell him everything. You testify against Wade and Harlan. You don't let them win. Can you promise me that? I promise. But only if you promise to not let anything happen. Eleanor smiled, despite the weight of their situation. I promise to try my best. That night, Eleanor could not sleep. She kept watch at the window, scanning the darkness for any sign of movement. The phone Ross had given her sat on the table, silent. No updates, no news. Just the waiting. Lucy woke around midnight and found Eleanor still standing vigil. You should rest. I'm okay. No, you're not. You haven't slept in 2 days. Lucy stood beside her. I can keep watch for a while. You taught me what to look for. Eleanor started to refuse, then stopped. Lucy needed to feel capable, needed to feel like she was contributing. 2 hours, Eleanor said. Then you wake me. She lay down on the couch but did not expect to sleep. Exhaustion pulled her under anyway, into dreams of Emma running through fields that turned into Afghan deserts, of Lucy's face replacing her daughter's, of violence and loss blurring together until she could not tell past from present. She woke to Lucy, shaking her shoulder. Eleanor. Someone's coming. Eleanor was on her feet instantly, weapon in hand. She moved to the window and saw headlights approaching up the access road. One vehicle moving slowly. Get in the back room, Eleanor ordered. If I don't call for you in 5 minutes, you go out the window and run for the tree line. Remember the route I showed you? Lucy nodded, her face pale but determined. She disappeared into the back room. Eleanor took position behind cover with a clear view of the door. She heard a vehicle door close, then footsteps on the porch. A knock 3 times, pause 2 times. The signal Ross had given her. She opened the door cautiously. Ross stood there, looking exhausted. We need to move, he said without preamble. Wade knows about this location. How? The leak goes higher than we thought. Someone in the regional office has been feeding him information. Ross looked past her. Where's the girl? Safe. What's the plan? Hammond's out of surgery, recovering. She's been working the case from her hospital bed. We've identified the shooter we captured. He's one of Wade's security people. He's not talking, but we traced his phone records. Wade's operation is bigger than we thought. Drug trafficking, weapons, even human trafficking. Eleanor felt sick. And Harlan? Right in the middle of it. He's been running interference for Wade for 5 years, since shortly after he married the girl's mother. Ross pulled out a folder. We think he married Sarah Price specifically to gain access to her property. It borders Wade's ranch, provides access to a forest service road that's perfect for moving shipments. Then Sarah discovered what they were doing, and they killed her for it. We need Lucy's testimony about the murder she witnessed. Combined with the journal and the evidence we're gathering, we can bring them all down. But we need to move her to federal custody. Real custody, not a safe house. Somewhere Wade can't reach. Eleanor called for Lucy, who emerged from the back room. Ross explained the situation. They would leave immediately, drive through the night to a facility 3 states away where Lucy would be protected until the trial. "What about Eleanor?" Lucy asked. "She can come with you as your guardian temporarily until we sort out the legal details." They gathered their few belongings quickly. As they prepared to leave, Eleanor took one last look around the cabin. Another temporary shelter, another place she was leaving behind. But this time felt different. This time, she was not running away from something. She was moving toward something. Justice, closure, a chance to make right what had gone so terribly wrong. Lucy took her hand as they walked to the vehicle. "Are you scared?" "Yes," Eleanor admitted, "but I'm also hopeful. And I haven't felt that in a very long time." They drove through the night, leaving Montana behind. In the back seat, Lucy slept with the locket clutched in her hand. Eleanor watched the landscape change outside the window, mountains giving way to plains, familiar territory becoming strange. She thought about Emma, about David, about 15 years spent hiding from life. She thought about Lucy's mother, and the courage it took to stand up against evil, even when you knew it might cost you everything. And she thought about second chances, about how sometimes the universe gives you an opportunity to get it right, even if you can't undo the past. Beside her, Ross drove in silence, his eyes on the road. Behind them, somewhere in the darkness, Wade and Harlan were plotting their next move. But ahead lay the possibility of justice, of healing, of transformation. Eleanor closed her eyes and for the first time in days allowed herself to believe they might actually survive this. The federal facility was a fortress, disguised as an office building. Eleanor and Lucy were processed through multiple security checkpoints before being assigned to a protected wing with armed guards at every entrance. Ross assured them they were safe, but Eleanor could not shake the feeling that Wade's reach was longer than anyone suspected. 2 days passed in sterile rooms and endless debriefings. Lucy gave her testimony repeatedly to different agents, each session recorded and documented. She told them about the murder she witnessed, about her mother's death, about Harlan's abuse. Eleanor watched the girl relive her trauma over and over, hating that there was no other way. On the 3rd day, Ross came to their room with news. "We've made arrests. Harlan Price is in custody, along with 6 of Wade's associates. Wade himself is being brought in tonight." "What about the charges?" Eleanor asked. "Multiple counts of trafficking, conspiracy to commit murder, racketeering. With Lucy's testimony and the evidence we've gathered, we have him." "It's over." Eleanor should have felt relief. Instead, she felt uneasy. Something about the timing bothered her. The arrests were happening too fast, too cleanly. That night, Eleanor could not sleep. She stood at the window of their secured room, looking out at the city lights below. The door opened, and an agent she did not recognize entered. "Miss Cross, there's someone here who wants to speak with you. Sheriff Roy Brennan from Timber Ridge." Eleanor's hand went instinctively to her weapon, which had been confiscated when they entered the facility. "Why would Brennan be here?" "He says it's important. Says you need to hear what he has to say." Eleanor looked at Lucy, who was pretending to sleep but was clearly listening. "I'll be back soon." She followed the agent to an interview room. Sheriff Brennan sat at the table, looking older and more worn than she remembered. When the agent left them alone, Brennan spoke. "I owe you an explanation. You owe me more than that. You helped Harlan hunt a child. I know how it looked. But Eleanor..." He pulled out a badge, but not his sheriff's badge. This one read FBI. "My name is Roy Brennan, but I'm not really a sheriff. I've been undercover for 18 months, embedded in Timber Ridge, to build a case against Thornton Wade." Eleanor stared at the badge, her mind reeling. "You're FBI?" "Deep cover. So deep that even most of the agents working this case don't know. Wade is paranoid, runs background checks on everyone close to him. I had to become the sheriff, had to play the part completely, or he never would have trusted me. You let him terrorize that girl. I tried to protect her without blowing my cover. When Sarah Price started asking questions about Wade, I warned her to back off. She wouldn't listen. I tried to get her to take Lucy and leave town. She almost did. His voice cracked. I failed her. I've had to live with that. Eleanor sat down slowly. Why are you telling me this now? Because there's something wrong with this case. The arrest happened too fast. Wade surrendered without a fight. And I've been hearing chatter that worries me. What kind of chatter? Wade has a contingency plan. He's been preparing for the possibility of arrest for years. He has evidence hidden. Evidence that implicates people much higher up than anyone suspects. Judges, politicians, federal agents. If he goes down, he's planning to take them all with him. That's his leverage. Exactly. But there's more. I've learned that Wade has people inside this facility. People who owe him, people he's compromised. Lucy isn't safe here. Eleanor felt ice in her veins. Ross said, Ross is clean, I think. But he's not the only one with access. Wade's people could get to Lucy before the trial. Then what do we do? Brennan leaned forward. There's a backup plan. A witness protection scenario that even Wade doesn't know about. But we have to move Lucy now, tonight, before Wade's people realize what's happening. Why should I trust you? You've been lying since the beginning, because I'm the one who's been feeding information to Hammond and Ross this whole time. I'm the one who documented every meeting, every transaction, every criminal act Wade committed. And I'm the one who knows his plans. Brennan pulled out a flash drive. This contains 18 months of recordings, Wade's voice, giving orders, approving murders, running his entire operation. It's everything we need to put him away forever. Eleanor studied his face, looking for deception. She saw only exhaustion and regret, the face of a man who had lived too long in darkness, pretending to be someone he was not. Why did you do this? Go undercover, I mean. Brennan's hands clenched on the table. 5 years ago, my daughter died. Overdose. She was 17. The drugs came through Wade's network. I couldn't prove it then. Couldn't do anything about it. So I volunteered for this assignment. Spent 2 years building a background, becoming Roy Brennan, getting elected sheriff of a town that didn't know I was planting evidence of my own existence. Eleanor understood. They were not so different, both driven by loss, both trying to save someone they could not save before. What's the plan? We move Lucy tonight. There's a vehicle waiting in the garage. I've cleared a route with agents I trust. We drive her to a location where she'll be completely off the grid until the trial. And Eleanor goes with her? If she wants. But Eleanor, once you leave this facility with me, there's no coming back until this is finished. You'll be in hiding with Lucy. Are you prepared for that? Eleanor thought about her cabin, about the life she had built in isolation. That life was gone anyway, burned to ash the moment she decided to protect Lucy. Going back was not an option. The only direction was forward. I'm prepared, Brennan stood. We leave in 1 hour. Tell Lucy to gather only what she can carry. No phones, no electronics, nothing that can be traced. Eleanor returned to their room and found Lucy sitting up, the locket around her neck. What happened? Eleanor explained quickly, watching Lucy's face shift from confusion to understanding. To her credit, the girl did not panic. She simply nodded and began gathering her few possessions. Do you trust him? Lucy asked. Eleanor considered the question. I think I do. But more importantly, I trust myself to protect you no matter what happens. They met Brennan in the parking garage as planned. He had changed out of his uniform into civilian clothes. Another man was with him, tall, scarred, familiar. Marcus? Eleanor stared at her old friend. Marcus Webb nodded. Brennan contacted me yesterday. Figured you'd need someone watching your back. How much does he know? Everything, Brennan said. Marcus has been helping from the outside, feeding me information about weapons trafficking in the region. He's part of this now. They drove through the night in a black SUV with government plates. Brennan explained the situation as they traveled. Wade's network was larger than anyone had suspected, reaching into state capitals, into federal agencies. even into the military supply chain. The evidence we have is enough to bring down dozens of people, Brennan said. But it also means dozens of people have a reason to make sure Lucy never testifies. That's why we're disappearing you both until the trial. Where are we going? Eleanor asked. Safe house that doesn't officially exist. Off the books, funded by discretionary budget. Only 5 people know about it, Hammond, Ross, Marcus, you and me. And when is the trial? 3 weeks. We've fast-tracked it. Wade will try to delay, but the judge, one of the few who isn't compromised, is pushing it through. Lucy had been quiet through all of this, staring out the window at the darkness. Now she spoke. What about after? After the trial? No one had an answer for that. After meant Lucy would be an orphan, a girl with no family and a target on her back. After meant Eleanor would have to decide what her life looked like when the crisis ended. But those were problems for later. For now, they drove through the night toward an uncertain future, united by shared purpose and the hope that justice might actually prevail. Eleanor looked at Lucy and saw not Emma's ghost, but a different child, one who had survived horrors and emerged with her courage intact. Eleanor had spent 15 years hiding from life. Now finally, she was living it again, driven by purpose and the fierce need to protect someone who needed her. The road stretched out before them, dark and winding. Behind them, the lights of the city faded into memory. And ahead lay 3 weeks of hiding, followed by a trial that would determine not just Wade's fate, but Lucy's future and perhaps Eleanor's redemption. They drove in silence. 4 people bound by loss and determination, racing toward a confrontation that would test them all. The safe house was a cabin deep in the North Dakota wilderness, so remote that the nearest neighbor was 20 miles away. It sat on government land that officially did not exist on any map, accessible only by a single unmarked road that wound through dense forest. Eleanor, Lucy, Marcus, and Brennan settled into an uneasy routine. Days were spent preparing Lucy for trial testimony, nights keeping watch against threats that might never come, or might arrive at any moment. Lucy practiced her testimony with Brennan, who played the role of defense attorney, asking harsh questions designed to prepare her for what Wade's lawyers would throw at her. Eleanor watched these sessions with growing anger at the system that required a traumatized child to relive her worst moments in front of strangers. But Lucy proved stronger than anyone expected. She answered questions clearly, without embellishment, sticking to facts. When Brennan tried to rattle her with aggressive questioning, she stayed calm. When he suggested she might be confused or mistaken, she held firm. "I know what I saw," she said. "Mr. Wade shot that man." Deputy Price, Harlan, stood there and did nothing. And 3 days later, my mother was dead. After one particularly intense practice session, Lucy went outside to sit on the porch. Eleanor followed and sat beside her. "You're doing well," Eleanor said. "I'm scared." "That's normal. Being brave doesn't mean not being scared. It means being scared and doing it anyway." Lucy played with the locket around her neck. "Do you think my mama would be proud of me? I think she'd be amazed by you. You've survived things that would break most adults. Sometimes I dream about her. In the dreams, she's alive and we're leaving, going somewhere safe. But then I wake up and remember that she's gone, and it's just me." Eleanor put her arm around Lucy's shoulders. "It's not just you. You have me now. And Marcus and Brennan, you have people who will fight for you. But what happens after the trial? Where do I go?" Eleanor had been thinking about this question for days. She had no legal right to Lucy. She was not family, not a foster parent, had no official standing. But the answer still came easily. "If you want, you stay with me. We'll figure out the legal details, but you won't be alone. I promise you that." Lucy looked up at her with hope and fear mixed in her expression. "You'd want that? To keep me? I would like nothing more." They sat together in silence, watching the sun set over the trees. For a moment, the danger and uncertainty faded, and there was just this, 2 people finding family in unlikely places. But peace never lasted long. That evening, Brennan received a call from Agent Hammond, now recovered from her gunshot wound and back at work. What she told him drained the color from his face. He gathered everyone in the main room. "We have a problem. Wade has hired someone to find Lucy before the trial." "Who?" Marcus asked. "Man named Garrett Cole, former military contractor. Dishonorable discharge for war crimes in Iraq. He's expensive and he's effective." Eleanor felt her blood run cold. She knew that name. "I know Cole. We crossed paths overseas. I was the one who reported him for what he did to civilians." Brennan looked at her sharply. "Then this is personal for him. He's not just getting paid, he's settling a score." Marcus stood and checked his weapon. "How close is he?" "Hammond says he's been tracking Lucy's movements. He knows about the arrests, knows about the trial date. He's figuring we have Lucy in protective custody somewhere. It's only a matter of time before he narrows down the location." "How would he find us?" Eleanor asked. "Only 5 people know about this place. Cole has resources. He's connected to intelligence networks, has access to surveillance we don't even know about. If he's determined enough, he'll find us." They spent the next day fortifying their position. Marcus and Brennan set up a perimeter with early warning systems, tripwires connected to bells, pressure plates that would alert them to anyone approaching. Eleanor taught Lucy what to do in case of attack, where to hide, where to run, how to signal for help. At night, they took turns keeping watch. Eleanor found herself staring into the darkness, remembering Iraq, remembering the reports of what Cole had done. He was not just dangerous, he was cruel, someone who enjoyed causing pain. On the 3rd night, the perimeter alarm sounded. Marcus was on watch. He woke everyone immediately. "Someone triggered the north sensor," he said, his voice calm but urgent. They took up defensive positions. Brennan and Marcus covered the approaches, while Eleanor moved Lucy to the reinforced back room they had prepared for this possibility. "Stay here," Eleanor said. "No matter what you hear, you stay hidden until I come for you. Remember what we practiced." Lucy nodded, pale but composed. "If you don't come in 30 minutes, I go out the window and run to the rally point." "That's right. And you keep running until you find help." Eleanor gave her the burner phone Ross had provided. "If you have to run, call this number. It goes straight to Hammond. Tell her what happened and where you are." Lucy hugged her fiercely. "Don't die. I don't plan to." Eleanor returned to the main room where Marcus and Brennan waited in the darkness. They could hear movement outside, not trying to be quiet, which meant confidence or numbers or both. A voice called from the trees. "Eleanor Cross, I know you're in there. Why don't we talk about this like civilized people?" Eleanor recognized that voice. "Garrett Cole." "We don't have anything to talk about," Eleanor called back. "Sure we do. You cost me my career. 15 years of my life gone because you couldn't keep your mouth shut about things that didn't concern you. Murder of civilians concerned me. Torture concerned me," Cole laughed, a sound without humor. "We were at war. People die in war. Unarmed people, children, details. Now you have a child in there with you. Funny how things come full circle. Hand her over and I'll let you walk away. This doesn't have to be personal. Everything about this is personal," Eleanor said. "You're not getting her. Then we do this the hard way. I brought friends. We can sit out here all night or we can come in. Your choice." Brennan moved to Eleanor's side. "He's buying time, positioning his people." "We need to act first," Eleanor thought fast. They were outnumbered, and Cole had the tactical advantage of choosing when to strike. But they had something he did not: knowledge of the terrain and preparation. "Marcus, the contingency plan," Eleanor said. Marcus nodded and moved to the back of the cabin. They had prepared for this possibility, a way to even the odds if they were attacked. Eleanor called out to Cole, "You want to do this the hard way? Let's do it." She fired 3 shots through the window, not at targets, but at specific points in the tree line where they had placed surprises earlier. The shots triggered homemade devices Marcus had rigged, bright flares and loud noises that lit up the forest and confused anyone using night vision. In the confusion, Brennan and Eleanor laid down covering fire, while Marcus slipped out the back with a rifle and positioned himself at a higher vantage point. Now they had someone on the perimeter, someone who could spot Cole's people. The firefight began in earnest. Cole's team returned fire, bullets punching through the cabin's wooden walls. Eleanor and Brennan took cover, returning fire only when they had clear targets. Marcus's voice came over the radio. "I count 4 hostiles. Cole and 3 others. They're trying to flank from the east." "Copy that," Brennan said. He moved to cover the eastern approach. Eleanor kept firing, keeping Cole's main group pinned down. She was aware of time passing. Every minute was another minute Lucy spent in danger, another minute that could go wrong. Then she heard it, a sound from the back room, a cry of fear. Someone had gotten past their defenses and found Lucy. Eleanor abandoned her position and ran to the back room. The door was open, and in the dim light she saw a man dragging Lucy toward the window. Lucy was fighting, kicking and scratching, but he was too strong. Eleanor did not hesitate. She fired once, hitting the man in the shoulder. He released Lucy and spun toward Eleanor, reaching for his weapon. She fired again, this time hitting him in the leg. He went down. Lucy ran to Eleanor, who grabbed her and pulled her close. "Are you hurt?" "No, I'm okay." The wounded man on the floor groaned. Eleanor kicked his weapon away and checked him for other weapons. He was one of Cole's people, young and scared now that things had gone wrong. Outside, the firefight continued. Then Marcus's voice on the radio. "1 hostile down. Cole is retreating." Brennan's response, "Let him go. We need to move now. They know where we are." Eleanor secured the wounded man with zip ties and left him on the floor. They had no time for prisoners. She grabbed Lucy and their emergency packs and met Marcus and Brennan at the front. "Vehicles out back," Marcus said. "We go now." They ran through the darkness to where Marcus had hidden a backup vehicle. Behind them, the cabin was riddled with bullet holes, no longer safe. They piled into the vehicle, and Marcus drove without lights, using night vision to navigate the rough trail. Lucy sat between Eleanor and Brennan, shaking. Eleanor held her hand and felt the girl's pulse racing. "You're safe now," Eleanor said, "but he found us. Cole found us. How do we know he won't find us again?" Brennan answered, "Because we're not running anymore. The trial is in 2 days. We're going straight to the courthouse, maximum security. Cole can't get to you there." 2 days, Lucy whispered. "Just 2 more days, and I can tell everyone the truth about what Wade did." About what Harlan did. Eleanor looked at her and saw not a frightened child, but a warrior preparing for battle. Lucy had survived everything Wade and Harlan threw at her. She had survived Cole's attack. And in 2 days, she would stand in court and deliver the testimony that would bring them all down. The road ahead was dark and uncertain. But for the first time since this journey began, Eleanor believed they were going to make it. The federal courthouse was a fortress of stone and glass, ringed by security that made the previous safe houses look amateur by comparison. Eleanor and Lucy were escorted through underground tunnels, past armed guards at every checkpoint, into a secure witness room where they would wait until Lucy was called to testify. Agent Hammond met them there, her arms still in a sling, but her eyes sharp and determined. The defense is going to try to rattle Lucy. They'll suggest she's confused, traumatized, making things up. They'll try to paint Harlan as a concerned parent and Wade as a respectable businessman. "Lucy knows what she saw," Eleanor said. "I know. And that's what matters. The jury needs to see her tell the truth clearly and without doubt." Hammond turned to Lucy. "Are you ready?" Lucy wore simple clothes, a blue dress that made her look even younger than her 10 years. She had the locket around her neck, hidden under the collar. Her hair was neat, her face clean. She looked like what she was, a child who had been through too much. "I'm ready," Lucy said. The courtroom was packed with spectators, journalists, and law enforcement. Eleanor sat in the gallery, close enough to see Lucy, but far enough to not be a distraction. Marcus and Brennan sat nearby, both watching the proceedings with the intensity of men who had staked everything on this outcome. Thornton Wade sat at the defense table in an expensive suit, looking every inch the successful rancher. Beside him, his lawyers looked confident. At another table, Harlan Price sat separately, his case split from Wade's, though both trials were being heard simultaneously for efficiency. Harlan looked diminished without his uniform and badge. His eyes found Lucy as she entered the courtroom, and Eleanor saw fear flicker across his face. Good. He should be afraid. Lucy was sworn in and took the stand. The prosecutor, a woman named Davidson, began with gentle questions, establishing Lucy's age, her background, her relationship to Harlan. Lucy, can you tell us about the night of September 15th, 3 years ago? Lucy's voice was steady. That was the night my mother died. Harlan said she fell down the stairs, but I was there. I heard them fighting. What were they fighting about? I don't know exactly. But my mama was scared. She kept saying she couldn't stay quiet anymore, that people were getting hurt. Harlan kept saying she was going to ruin everything. What happened then? I heard my mama scream. I ran from my room and saw her at the bottom of the stairs. Harlan was at the top. He wasn't trying to help her. He was just standing there. Did you tell anyone what you saw? I told the sheriff. I told my teacher, but nobody believed me. Harlan said I was making it up because I was sad about Mama dying. The prosecutor moved to the night 3 days before Sarah's death, when Lucy witnessed the murder at Wade's property. Lucy described what she saw with perfect clarity: the trucks, the crates, the argument, the gunshot. Can you identify the man who fired the gun? Davidson asked. Lucy pointed at Wade. That's him. Mr. Wade, he shot the man in the red jacket. And Deputy Price was present. Yes, he didn't do anything. He just watched. The defense attorney, a sharp-faced man named Rollins, cross-examined with obvious calculation. He tried to suggest Lucy was confused, that it was dark, that she was upset and might have seen things that did not happen. Lucy did not waver. I know what I saw. It was real. Isn't it true that you've been diagnosed with anxiety and depression? Yes, after my mother was killed. And you've been on medication for these conditions? Sometimes. When Harlan remembered to give it to me, these medications can affect perception, can't they? Make you see things differently. The prosecutor objected, but the damage was attempted. Rollins was trying to undermine Lucy's credibility, to make her seem unreliable. But Lucy looked directly at the jury when she answered. The medication didn't change what I saw. Mr. Wade killed that man. Harlan helped cover it up, and then they killed my mother because she found out. The courtroom was silent. Eleanor watched the jurors' faces and saw belief there, saw empathy for this brave child. Rollins tried several more approaches, but Lucy held firm. She did not embellish or exaggerate. She simply told the truth over and over until it became undeniable. When Lucy was finally dismissed, she walked past the defense table. Harlan tried to catch her eye, perhaps hoping for some sign of the scared child he had terrorized. But Lucy looked at him with something colder than fear. She looked at him with the understanding that he had lost. Eleanor met Lucy outside the courtroom and pulled her into a hug. You were perfect. So brave. Lucy was shaking now, the adrenaline draining away. Is it over? Almost. The prosecution has more witnesses, Brennan, Hammond, others. But your part is done. You did it. They returned to the witness room where Marcus brought food that Lucy barely touched. She sat with Eleanor, exhausted and relieved. While in the courtroom, the case continued to unfold. Brennan testified about his undercover work, about the recordings he had made, about 18 months of documenting Wade's criminal empire. He described the network of corruption that stretched from Timber Ridge to state capitals, from local deputies to federal agents. Hammond testified about the ambush, about the leak in the agency, about the evidence they had gathered that showed a pattern of trafficking, violence and murder stretching back years. One by one, the pieces fell into place. The evidence was overwhelming. The testimony was damning. But Eleanor could not shake the feeling that something was wrong. Wade sat too calmly at his table, too confident for a man facing life in prison. His lawyers whispered to him occasionally, and each time he smiled slightly. He had a plan. Eleanor was sure of it, and whatever it was, it would come soon. The answer came on the trial's 3rd day, as the prosecution rested its case. Wade's defense attorney stood and made a motion that sent shockwaves through the courtroom. Your Honor, we move to enter into evidence material that was sealed by the court under previous order. This material directly impacts the credibility of key witnesses in this case. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s named Hernandez, frowned. What material are you referring to, Counselor? Personnel files, Your Honor. Specifically the military records of Eleanor Cross, who has been harboring the primary witness and has been present throughout this case. Eleanor felt her stomach drop. She stood from the gallery. Your Honor, I'm not a witness. My records are not relevant. Rollins turned to face her. On the contrary, Miss Cross, you've been intimately involved in this case from the beginning. You removed Lucy Price from her legal guardian's custody. You've influenced her testimony, and your records show a pattern of instability that this court should consider. The judge looked at Eleanor, then at the prosecutor. This is highly irregular, Miss Davidson. Davidson stood. The defense is attempting to smear a civilian who acted to protect a child in danger. Eleanor Cross's military service is irrelevant to the facts of this case, but Rollins was prepared. He submitted documents to the judge. Eleanor's complete military file, including her psychological evaluations after Emma and David died, her decision to leave the service, her years of isolation in the mountains. These records show a woman with unresolved trauma, who projects her loss onto others, who sees threats where none exist. Lucy Price's testimony has been shaped by months of exposure to Miss Cross's paranoia and instability. The accusation hung in the air. Eleanor wanted to shout, to defend herself, but she knew that would only make things worse. She looked at Lucy, who was staring at her with fear and confusion. The judge reviewed the documents in chambers, then returned with a decision. The defense has opened a door that cannot be easily closed. I'm going to allow limited questioning about Miss Cross's involvement in this case. However, she looked sternly at Rollins, you will not turn this trial into an examination of trauma suffered in service to this country. Am I clear? Yes, Your Honor. Eleanor was called to the stand. She had not expected this, had not prepared for it. But as she sat in the witness box, she found a strange calm settling over her. Rollins began with seemingly innocent questions about how she met Lucy, about her decision to help the girl. Then he moved to the personal. Miss Cross, you lost your daughter 15 years ago. Emma was 10 years old when she died, correct? Yes, the same age as Lucy Price. Yes, and you've lived alone in the mountains since then, isolated from society, dwelling on your loss. Davidson objected. Argumentative. Sustained, the judge said. Rephrase, Counselor. Rollins tried again. Isn't it true that you saw in Lucy Price a chance to save the daughter you couldn't save before? Eleanor looked at him directly. Yes, the answer surprised him. He had expected denial, defensiveness. So you admit your judgment was compromised? No, I admit that I understood what it meant to lose someone you love. I understood what Lucy was facing because I had faced something similar. That gave me empathy, not delusion. But your empathy led you to remove Lucy from her legal guardian, to go on the run, to fill her head with stories about murder and conspiracy. I didn't fill her head with anything, Eleanor said firmly. Lucy came to me with the truth. I simply believed her when no one else would, and everything she told me has been proven true. Your client killed a man in front of her. Harlan Price killed her mother. Those are facts, not fantasies. Rollins tried several more approaches, but Eleanor did not break. She admitted to her grief, her isolation, her pain, but she did not apologize for protecting Lucy. When she was finally dismissed, she walked past Wade's table. He looked at her with cold calculation, and she understood. This had been his play, to undermine Lucy's testimony by undermining Eleanor's credibility, to suggest that Lucy was just a confused child manipulated by a traumatized woman. But it had not worked. The jury had heard the evidence. They had seen Lucy's courage and honesty. They had heard Brennan's testimony and seen the proof of Wade's crimes. The closing arguments took another full day. Then the jury deliberated. Eleanor and Lucy waited in the witness room with Marcus and Brennan, each hour stretching longer than the last. Lucy held Eleanor's hand, neither of them speaking much. Finally, after 6 hours, the jury returned. The courtroom filled again. Eleanor held her breath as the verdict was read. On the count of first degree, murder, guilty. On the count of drug trafficking, guilty. On the count of conspiracy to commit murder, guilty. Count after count, guilty. Wade's face remained impassive, but Harlan broke down, sobbing at his table. When it was over, when both men were led away in chains, Lucy turned to Eleanor with tears streaming down her face. "It's really over." "Yes," Eleanor said, pulling her close. "It's really over. You did it. You got justice for your mother." They left the courthouse together, walking out into afternoon sunshine. The nightmare that began with a frightened girl hiding under a table had ended with two powerful men facing life in prison. But more than that, it had ended with Eleanor and Lucy finding each other, two people who needed saving each other. 6 months later, Eleanor stood on the porch of her rebuilt cabin, watching Lucy play in the yard with a stray dog they had adopted. The cabin was larger now, with a proper second bedroom and better insulation. Marcus had helped with the construction, and the community had pitched in with supplies and labor. Things had changed in Timber Ridge. A new sheriff had been elected, a woman from outside. The county with a clean record and a reputation for integrity. Several of Wade's associates had been arrested and convicted. The trafficking network had been dismantled, piece by piece. Harlan Price was serving life in federal prison. Wade was in a supermax facility, isolated from the empire he had built. The trial had exposed corruption at every level, leading to a cleanup that would take years to complete. But it was happening. Lucy was thriving. She attended school in Timber Ridge now, a small school where the teachers knew what she had been through and supported her recovery. She saw a counselor twice a week, working through the trauma at her own pace. Some days were harder than others, but she was healing. Eleanor had officially adopted Lucy 3 months ago. The process had been complicated by her lack of traditional qualifications. She was not married, not wealthy, not young, but Agent Hammond had advocated for her, as had Brennan and Marcus. The judge had listened to Lucy, who made clear that she wanted to stay with Eleanor. "You saved each other," the judge had said at the final hearing. "That's what family does." Now Eleanor worked part-time at the community clinic, using her medical skills to help people. She was no longer isolated, no longer hiding from life. People waved to her on the street, invited her and Lucy to dinners and events. She had friends, real friends, not just acquaintances. Pauline Hart from the saloon had become particularly close. She brought meals when Eleanor was too tired to cook and babysat Lucy when Eleanor had appointments. She had lost her own daughter years ago and understood the strange shape of family that could form from loss. Marcus visited once a month, always bringing gifts for Lucy and help with whatever projects Eleanor was working on. He had become a grandfather figure, teaching Lucy skills and telling stories that made her laugh. Brennan had left the FBI after the trial. He could not go back to undercover work, and regular agent work felt too tame after what he had been through. Now he ran a non-profit that helped children of drug addiction, funding it with the money from his book about the case. He called sometimes to check on Lucy, to make sure she was doing well. On this particular afternoon, Eleanor watched Lucy throw a stick for the dog, a scruffy mutt they had named Rusty, and felt something she had not felt in 15 years, peace. Not the absence of pain, but the presence of something stronger, purpose, connection, love. Lucy ran up to the porch, breathless and laughing. "Eleanor, did you see how far Rusty ran?" "I saw. He's getting good at fetch." Lucy flopped down on the porch step, the dog panting beside her. She still wore the locket every day, Emma's picture inside. Eleanor had told her she could keep it, that Emma would have wanted her to have it. "What are you thinking about?" Lucy asked. "How different things are from 6 months ago. How different they are from 15 years ago." Lucy nodded. "Do you miss your old life? Before me?" Eleanor sat down beside her. "Not for a second. That wasn't really living. It was just existing. You gave me a reason to live again. You gave me a reason to keep fighting," Lucy said quietly. "When I was with Harlan, I thought maybe I was wrong. Maybe I was crazy like he said. But you believe me. You were never crazy. You were brave and smart and honest. You still are." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun sink toward the mountains. The dog settled at their feet, content. "Lucy," Eleanor said, "there's something I want to ask you." "Okay, I know we don't talk much about the future, about what you want to do, who you want to become. But I want you to know that whatever you decide, I'll support you. If you want to stay here forever, that's fine. If you want to go to college someday in a big city, that's fine too. You get to choose your own path. Lucy thought about this for a moment. I think I want to be a lawyer, like Miss Davidson, someone who helps kids who can't help themselves. Eleanor felt pride swell in her chest. That's a good choice. You'd be excellent at it, but not for a long time. Right now, I just want to be here with you. And Rusty, she scratched the dog's ears, that sounds perfect to me. Evening settled over the mountains, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. Inside the cabin, Eleanor made dinner while Lucy set the table. They ate together, talking about Lucy's school day, about the book Eleanor was reading, about plans for the weekend. After dinner, they sat by the fire. Lucy did homework while Eleanor mended a jacket. The radio played softly in the background. It was domestic and ordinary and exactly what both of them needed. Later, when Lucy was getting ready for bed, she called out to Eleanor. "Can you tell me a story about Emma?" Eleanor came to her room and sat on the edge of the bed. "What kind of story?" "A happy one." Eleanor told her about the time Emma had tried to build a treehouse by herself and ended up stuck in the tree for 2 hours before Eleanor found her. Lucy laughed, imagining it. "She sounds like she was fun," Lucy said. "She was. And you know what? I think she would have liked you very much. I think you two would have been friends." Lucy smiled and closed her eyes, the locket resting against her chest. "I would have liked that." Eleanor kissed her forehead. "Sleep well, sweetheart." "Good night, Eleanor." Eleanor turned off the light and stood in the doorway for a moment, watching Lucy settle into sleep. This child who had come into her life terrified and broken, who had given Eleanor a reason to fight, to feel, to live again. Emma would never come back. David would never come back. 15 years of grief could not be erased, but it could be transformed into something else, into love for a child who needed it, into purpose that gave meaning to survival. Eleanor walked back to the living room and looked at the mantel, where 2 photographs now sat side by side. One of Emma and David, her first family. One of Eleanor and Lucy, taken at the adoption ceremony, their new beginning. She picked up the photo of Lucy and studied it. In the picture, Lucy was smiling, a real smile full of hope and happiness. Eleanor had her arm around the girl's shoulders, and she was smiling too, for the first time in so long. Family was not always about blood. Sometimes it was about choice, about people who found each other when they needed it most. Sometimes it was about second chances and redemption and learning that the heart could expand to hold new love without forgetting the old. Outside, the Montana night was clear and cold. Inside, the fire burned warm. And for the first time since she lost Emma, Eleanor felt complete. Not because the past had been erased, but because the present held enough joy to balance it. She set the photo down and went to her own room, ready for whatever tomorrow would bring. Ready to keep living, keep loving, keep protecting the family she had chosen and who had chosen her. The story that began with a frightened girl hiding under a table had become a story about courage, about justice, about 2 survivors finding their way home to each other. And that, Eleanor thought as she drifted off to sleep, was a story worth telling.